Hello and welcome to Responding to Emotional Distress Using Psychological First Aid, or PFA. This is part 1, Supporting Schools in Distress Using PFA, and it's all part of the Wellbeing for Education Resilience Programme. We'd like to highlight the Face COVID video by Russ Harris. If you haven't already seen it, please take 5 minutes to watch as it gives a great overview of how to support wellbeing as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. You can click directly on the link when viewing this presentation in slideshow mode. This video will be looking at responding to emotional distress using psychological first aid. Some of the topics touched upon in this video may be discussed in further detail in the concept index or in one of the other webinar videos in the programme. It may be helpful to take a moment to familiarise yourself with some of the other video webinar titles. Should you have any questions in regards to these videos, please forward these to your mental health lead and they can be discussed in one of our network meeting Q&As. Here you can see what will be covered in this presentation. If you see the thought bubble symbol, it will mean there's an activity for you to have a go at should you wish to. Simply pause the video and give it a go. Remember to always be kind to yourself when watching these video presentations. Be aware of how you're feeling throughout, and should you need to, take a break or check in with a friend or family member. There are also some suggestions on the last slides for places you can go if you would like to seek further support. So throughout the WER Programme, the concept of emotional regulation and ways of helping people to feel better is described through the ideas of our stress response system and the emotional pot of regulation, co-regulation or mutual regulation, self-regulation, the regulate, relate, reason and restore or repair model, and emotion coaching. All of these rely on connection to others and relationships. You might also want to consider William Glasser's connecting habits. These can be found in the concept index. Some of these concepts can also be found in some of our other webinar videos, in particular the stress response videos. Building relationships is one of the most important things we can do when we're looking at building resilience, supporting our young people with their well-being and their mental health. Mainly because it builds trust, and because if we don't know our students, we don't know how to read their body language, we don't know how to tell when something's wrong, and we don't know what their stressors might be and how we can help them alleviate these. So in order to build good, strong relationships, you might want to consider the 9 S's. We have safety. So if we're thinking about our stress response and making sure they feel safe, they're much more likely to learn, be able to problem solve, and trust you as well. We want to really establish that trust. Success. Really praise them for any success they have. Supervision. This is about noticing them and knowing them. The better you know them, the more able you are to notice the things that are wrong, any changes. Structure. Boundaries are so important when you're building a relationship. They have to know that there are boundaries, and boundaries are also, and structure also make them feel more safe and secure. Soothe. So this is helping them with their mutual and co-regulation. Smile. There's so much in terms of them feeling seen, just smiling to them and showing them that you are happy to be around them. Shame. So rather than this being something you should do, this is something to avoid. Shouting. Shouting just doesn't work in building relationships. If you were to think of a friendship or a loving relationship you have, or a trusting relationship that you have with someone, you wouldn't expect them to be shouting at you. And stimulation. We want to avoid overstimulation, purely because this means that they're more likely to enter their fight, flight and freeze response. And as a result, there's more likely that they're going to display some sort of behaviour that you're not happy with, which could cause a slight breakdown in some sort of relationship you build, or alternatively, they may just become in a state of not feeling safe or just feeling stressed. So we want them to feel safe around you, we want them to know that you're there for them, and it's really important that you know them and are able to see any changes or concerns that might arise. So the whole point of the WER programme is looking at how we can support our young people, our staff members, and our whole school with their emotional distress or any sort of mental health concerns that we may have. And this in particular will be happening when we're coming back into our new normal from the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure you'll all be asking yourselves, what can I do to support this person? Do I have the skills to support this person? Can I tell them where they can go? Do I know everything that's available to them? But what's key to remember is at the basis of every intervention and every support is the idea of relationships and connectedness. And this is what's really important to us as human beings and thinking of our needs of belonging. So just providing emotional support to one another through your everyday relationships is so important. Remember this phrase: every interaction is an intervention. Just saying hello to someone makes them feel seen. Just letting them know that you're there for them should you need them, and just being there to have a conversation. You don't need to be a therapist to just be there and talk to someone. Because remember, talking itself is therapeutic. So just having these connections and relationships with your staff, with your students, with your peers, with your parents goes a long, long way.
We would really like to acknowledge with school staff the various ways in which you have been managing and coping with a huge amount of ongoing uncertainty throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, which, as we know, began kind of March 2020 and is still continuing today and has been going on for a long while now and continues to be very relevant in terms of thinking about your procedures and your teaching and learning in school and all of the things that are set up in terms of health and safety. So we know that there have been all of these things, how schools have responded to the lockdowns, having to have some of your children learning at home, having some of your children coming and learning in school, all the different restrictions around safety and the guidance around that, having to learn around doing things differently and how we're going to be teaching in different ways and providing education in all these different settings. There's definitely been a feeling throughout the COVID-19 pandemic of goalposts shifting very, very quickly and very seriously in terms of procedures that have been outlined and then new guidance released, which means that actually you're having to change things at short notice. So it's just this uncertainty. We've only ever been certain about being uncertain about things, which is not a very nice place to be in and experience. We know that the many schools and families have experienced bereavements and people have died during the COVID pandemic, either from COVID-19 related illnesses or through other ways that people die within their lives as well. And not only around bereavement and death, but in just so many losses that young people, children, students, staff have experienced, families have experienced, losses of rites of passage, of proms, of transitions, of taking exams, of A-levels, GCSE, SATs, all these different things that have been lost along the way. And as school staff, you have provided ongoing safe bases for children, young people and families and for staff to experience these losses but in a way where you can look after each other as well, and be hopeful and try to do the best you can in providing alternatives to some of these events, and to try and acknowledge the losses that have been experienced. And everybody that works in a school has had really interesting kind of home life balance factored into that as well. Thoughts, feelings, challenges we've had, our own health and well-being that we've had, juggling, home learning, homeschool learning of our own children, whilst still teaching or running schools and settings. So there's been a massive pressure in terms of home life balance and threats to our own well-being. And within this ongoing uncertainty, there have been so many ways that you as staff in schools and settings and colleges have coped and have grown and have supported one another. So we really wanted to acknowledge all of these wonderful things that have been going on. It's been astounding to feel the dedication to children and young people and families that you work with in your schools, and to think about how you've been so thoughtful and careful around the decisions that you make and how, decisions impact on other people. The caring that you've shown for trying to continue to teach and, raise the importance of education, but also having to try to do this in a safer way as possible. And we know that staff have been on the front line throughout the pandemic, so the selflessness in which staff have done that to, enable themselves to teach some of the more vulnerable young people in person has not gone unnoticed. The flexibility that staff have shown has just been amazing. That's been such a strength. And the endurance for these constant changes and all these different adaptations that have needed to be made very quickly, and how adaptable staff and senior teams, leadership teams have been. We know that lots of people have learned lots of different things. So, we've learned lots of technology, we've learned lots of skills about how to do things. And definitely there's so many examples of people supporting one another and staff working together, even if apart, finding different ways of linking, of connecting, of keeping in touch, of being there emotionally, supporting one another, even when we've not been able to be physically together. So just a big, huge thank you to everybody who works in schools, settings, colleges, and all the things that you've been doing and continue to do, because we're still very much within this uncertain situation. We're still not completely out of it at all. So just thank you very much for all the work that you've been doing. When there are sad events or critical incidents, and there needs to be community responses and support given to a school or a community, psychological first aid is often an approach that's used. Psychological first aid is used across the world as a model to give aid and support during crises, and it underpins many educational psychology services responses to supporting schools with critical incidents. And for those of you that know about the recovery curriculum in schools in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the recovery curriculum is based on the principles of psychological first aid as well. So with the underpinnings of psychological first aid, school and college systems and individual interactions with other people aim to do the following 5 things. So when we're speaking about psychological first aid, we're talking about creating feelings of safety. We give messages of reassurance. We try to give safe spaces to people. We try to give people predictability and routine. We try to help them to stabilise what's going on, to help them feel safe. We're trying to promote feelings of calmness. We give information. We're clear. We speak truthfully and honestly where we can, giving the information that's needed at the right level, depending on who it is we're talking to and the age of the person we're talking to. But we're trying to create a feeling of stability and of calmness. We highlight and strengthen people's abilities to cope. So we're thinking about how are they managing, how are they doing, how have they been getting through this, what things have been helping them, what's working for them, who has been helping them. And this helps to boost connections with others. We know that being connected and relationships help us to get our basic needs met. So we really want to, when something shocking has happened, we really want to boost connections between people, between individuals, between groups, between services, between schools, between communities, to bring people together. And throughout all of this, we try to promote a sense of hope and a sense of sitting with difficult feelings for the moment, but that always reminding people that these difficult feelings and overwhelming feelings do subside eventually, and that feelings do change over time. So we're kind of always promoting this idea of hope for better times. Here we'll talk to you about a critical incidents in schools and the kind of support you can expect from your local authority. So what is a critical incident? It's something that happens within a school community, an event that impacts on the usual functioning of the school or a service. And how would we know what kind of support might be needed in a school? And it isn't the actual event that determines what level of support is needed, but the actual impact that it has on the functioning of the school or service. So we know this when we would speak to the head teachers or the senior leadership of the school, and we will talk with them initially to help them to assess how this incident has impacted on their school and the running day-to-day life of the school community. And we will discuss the level of support that they think they might need. It's not about the event or the actual what happens, because you may have a seemingly minor critical incident that actually really does affect and impact and impairs the school's functioning. In another school, you may have quite a major incident, but that school may be quite well versed in implementing their critical incident management plan. They may have resources to manage and respond and to feel confident in delivering that plan, and therefore they might not need so much support. So it isn't actually what happens, the kind of incident that happens in the school. It's about talking with the school leadership team about how that's impacting on the school and the kind of support they need and what kinds of support can be offered. So the aim of any critical incident support work from a local authority to schools, school communities, is to enable the school staff to be able to support that school community. So initially, the educational psychologists or the key people who are coordinating the support to the school will speak with and work with the head teacher and senior management team to work with them to implement and help them implement their critical incident management plan. And as part of that plan, there'll be lots of roles and jobs on there of different things that need to be done. And the educational psychology service will think with the school about who in the local authority might be able to help them with any of these aspects of the plan, and to put them in touch and kind of coordinate that support for them. It may be that the school needs some help kind of prioritising what to do first, maybe about helping the school to assess who needs support and to kind of help to prioritise who needs support and what kind of support do they need. It may be about coordinating other services to support the school and to think about the kind of resources that the school have already, and to kind of model. So it may be that the school support could range from a telephone conversation or where the psychology service sends some resources to the school to help them in addition to what they already have. Or it may be that there might be some members of the local authority educational psychology service or other teams who go onto the school site and to work with the school team and the school staff, working alongside them to assist them in providing kind of emotional support. It's not counselling when educational psychologists come to schools to support critical incidents. It is emotional support, and that emotional support is most often wanted by people who already know each other rather than complete strangers. So it often helps for people who are available, who have good listening ears in school, who have good active listening skills to be available for students and parents and staff to speak with, and the educational psychologist can help to kind of model some of those communications and that emotional support, and encouraging the school staff to do that with them, so that when the psychologists are no longer in the school staff can continue to do that emotional support work for however long is needed. And here are some key messages for schools in terms of thinking about critical incidents. So I've mentioned having a critical incident management plan. Make sure that staff are familiar with that and that you do trainings within school on that. When something happens in the world that kind of shocks us, it can kind of pull the rug from underneath us, and it can shake our trust in the world. And it's okay that we may become a little bit more anxious or a bit more curious or quizzical about the world and question people's safety and our own safety and question the safety for our families. We need time to regain that trust, and we need to be reassured that that trust does grow back over time. It's really important that we normalise lots of different people's responses and feelings. So whether people feel shocked or angry or scared or don't feel anything at all, just enabling people to experience whatever it is that they are feeling at that time, and to know that that's normal and okay. We promote routine, but with flexibility. So we try and encourage the school to run as usual, but it may be that for some students or some members of staff or for some families, there might need to be some flexibility in normal day-to-day expectations and routines. And as I mentioned earlier on, most people who have experience in distress, they recover from support by people they already know. So sometimes we panic and think, oh, they need to speak to a specialist or they need some therapeutic support, and that may be that will be helpful in time, but actually in the immediacy, in the immediate aftermath of a critical incident, actually people need to be connected with people they already know. And sometimes you can have guests or visitors in school to help facilitate that, but generally people who are already in the school and who are already working in the school are the best people to be delivering that. And it's important to know where you can access further support if needed, and your educational psychology service will be able to support you with that too. So just leading on from the psychological first aid model, that is one of the basic models that's used to underpin responding to critical incidents and traumatic events in schools. So when we talk about critical incidents, as we did on the slide before, we're thinking about occasions where there may be a death of somebody in the school, so maybe a pupil, a member of staff, somebody who works closely with the school and the school community. It may be an event such as an accident or an incident off-site, so it could be something that's happened on a school trip or something that happens in the local community. It could be something like a house fire that's affected children in the school. It could be something to do with something, an event that happens, a scary event happening in the local community that might have affected that some school children or school staff might have witnessed. So it could be lots of different things and events that some people could find shocking, scary or traumatic. And PIES is another model just to present to you, another acronym that can help you to think about particularly some of the key messages that were on the previous slide in terms of what do we know that works best with people who've experienced distressing events. So P is for proximal. We talk a lot about thinking about how to prioritise people who were close to the event as possible. And they may be close to the event because they were physically present, but it may be they were close to the event because they were close to the person or persons that have been affected. So they may have been socially close to the event. And it may be that somebody was close to the event in terms of not necessarily they were involved, but they might have heard or seen ambulances, fire engines, they might have seen smoke, they might have heard noises. So thinking about proximal, who was around the event and putting in the support as close to where people are. So actually when you're thinking about providing support, actually sitting with people, offering a listening ear, and thinking about the support, asking them what help they might feel that they need. Immediacy is about just doing ordinary everyday things, but doing that straight away, not being frightened to think, oh, I mustn't talk with them about this because for fear of upsetting them, or for fear of not being able to cope or manage, or fearing that you're not a professional, you're not a therapist or a counsellor. This is okay that ordinary people who know people who've been upset or distressed, just to connect with them, just to ask them how they are, whether they're okay, do they want to talk about anything. Don't ask direct questions about what's happened. Don't ask them to tell you what's happened. Don't ask them to describe how they felt or what they saw or anything to do with the event in itself, because this can be quite traumatizing again for them if the person isn't ready to think about it. But just offering a listening ear and checking in with someone saying, are you okay? Would you like some company? Would you like me to sit with you? Would you like to be with somebody, be around someone? And just have your active listening ears open, and be listening with your eyes as well to see what people are doing and how they're feeling and what cues they're giving you. But it's about keeping it simple and keeping it ordinary, okay, rather than doing something that you think something specialist might need to happen. Do the simplest things first. So again, in terms of just listening, keeping calm, promoting that sense of calm, reassuring somebody, providing a safe place, just checking in with them, keeping that connection going, that connection and hope, that calmness, all of those things. And expectancy is about what we expect. So we know that this rocks our world. We know that we can expect people to be wobbly, people to be a bit ultra anxious perhaps, people to have a variety of feelings. But we also expect that children, young people and staff do recover. And it's a watch and wait kind of process sometimes. So sometimes we do a kind of patient watching where we kind of look and we observe and we monitor to see how somebody's doing, and we give them the support that we can through their connections and their normal people that they would talk to. And if somebody is having a very severe reaction, or with the simple support, the ordinary support that you're putting in, if they don't seem to be recovering from that over a period of time, then that's when you can start thinking about, okay, maybe we do need to be making referrals to other support services to get some extra support. Psychological first aid can also be promoted through the look, listen, link model. It's a really easy way of remembering if all else fails and everything else goes out of your head, you're thinking, oh, you know, what do I need to do? Just think, look, listen, link. It's a really nice acronym. And we're going to be thinking about this in the part 2 session of this PFA. So it's looking for signs of distress in other people, being aware of what's going on around you, looking at, and seeing what's happening. Listen, so providing that listening ear, being kind, being understanding, even if it's just for a few seconds or a few minutes. Hasn't got to be long sessions, but just to be available to people. And then to link. So think about, we know that connectedness and relationships are so important. We know that being active is important. We know that being engaged and feeling valued and feeling like you have a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. So thinking about how you can link this person or people into sources of support, and there could be lots of different opportunities for that, whether that be through clubs or physical activity groups, or it could be about other agencies or charities, or it could be linking them up to online resources. It doesn't have to be actual people, it could be events or people. So we're going to go into more detail in that in the next session. This model here is going to be discussed in more detail in the next session, so it's just really here as a visual, just to reinforce the idea that the look, listen, link, this psychological informed first aid, can be used for all ages, whether you're thinking about children, in nursery settings, preschool settings, we're thinking about primary school children, secondary colleges, members of staff from all types of school setting and colleges. This is a model that can be used in terms of thinking about how can we provide support to people, how can we use the look, listen, link model. And this is about a process that you might find yourself going through with some people, not everybody, but some people might need a bit more of a repetitive cycle of discussion and listening and support. And this model is explained in the next session. The Thurrock COVID-19 Child Wellbeing Support Line has been set up to support children, young people, their families and school staff during the coronavirus pandemic. It is for anybody to call or email if they'd like to speak to somebody about an issue or a theme to do with wellbeing. This can be staff from school, parents and family members, young people themselves. If they call the support line number or email the helpline email, leave a message with their name and contact number, and someone from the team will call them back. There are also some other contacts here for local support services.